Oh,
Ta-da! No, it's just photo booth. We were going to come a little closer, Mary, so they could see us on the webcam.
yeah. Wait, I'm getting my stuff ready.
Come on. Start the meeting. You know what? I wonder if we need a speaker.
Really loud.
That's a good idea, eh?
Oh, we have to take notes. Do we?
Yeah, but if you don't want to take notes, I'm recording it, and we could take notes after.
It says talking down there.
Hello? Hi there. Good morning.
Hi. This is Cordelia.
Hi, Cordelia. This is Daniel. I'm here with several of my students.
Oh, hi. Good morning. And then also we're going to have Dr. Brower join us, who's the president of Ilisagvik College in Ilisagvik. And then also we're going to have two members of our APEC studies staff, and that's Nate, Jarek Amit, and Katie Roseberry.
Hey, that's great. Hi, everybody. Can you see us?
Oh. Can you hear me? I can't see you yet.
Okay, we There we go. Thank you. All right. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Lalota.
Hi. Good. Thank you guys so much for the time to call you.
Yeah, we're really happy to be connected.
Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Cordelia, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Okay. I need to figure out, my volume is really down, is really low, and so I need to figure out. So why don't you go ahead and kind of start us up or whatever we need to do, and I'm going to try and get my volume to be appropriate.
Okay, well, you've done great to us, bro.
I'll just introduce myself. I'm Shante Bruce from Coral Harbor.
I'm Jennifer Kaluk from Igloolik, Nunavut.
Hi, I'm Mary Sarah Nikipisco from Iqaluit, Nunavut.
We have a couple of students who are missing and may be able to join us later, and I'm Dan. I'm their instructor for the Circumpolar course in second year.
Great. And my name, again, is Cordelia Kelly, and my family's from Wainwright, which is 90 miles southwest of Ilisagvik, formerly known as Barrow, or sometimes known as Barrow.
I guess my name is Jerica Ahmed. My Inupiaq name is Neo. I live here in Ilisagvik, where my family is from. My mother's from this area. And I also have family in the littlest village here in the North Slope called Atukasuk.
Hi everyone, my name is Katie Roseberry. I also grew up in Ilisagvik with my family, and my grandparents are from here, my mom is from here, we have roots here.
And is it my turn? Good morning. Sorry, I have to tell everybody that my camera is in the weirdest place on my computer, so it always looks a little funky. So I'm gonna look at my camera because then it looks like I'm looking at you, but I'm looking really far down. But good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Pearl Brower. I have the privilege of serving as president of Ilisagvik College. We are Alaska's only tribal college. And I've been here at the institution for almost 13 years. Interestingly enough, a group from NS came to Barrow in the early 2000s, and I had a chance to meet them, and I still stay connected with some of them today. Jesse Mike and Winter Kuliktana and some of that group. So it's pretty neat to still have this connection. And when I was writing my dissertation, I actually looked at your school and some of the work that you've done in kind of developing you as youth, as leaders for your communities and for your future. So I'm really excited to be on the call today, and thank you so much for reaching out to us to have this opportunity to visit with you.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, maybe we can just introduce the other two students that just came.
Sorry. My name is Lily Parr, and I'm from Cape Dorset, Nunavut.
And my name is Shelton Nipisa, and I'm from Mabvet, Nunavut.
Cordelia, you're on mute. Were you going? Are you? Oh, there you.
Yeah. Okay. Hi. Oh, wonderful. Nice to meet you. So, what are you learning in class, and what are you interested in learning from us?
Ooh, that's a good question.
So we're all second year students, and so we have various classes including political science, community development, research, and we also take Circumpolar, so we look at all the indigenous people in the Circumpolar region. And so right now we're learning about Alaska, and so we're hoping to learn more about it.
What were some of the things that you've learned before about in your class about Alaska? And do you have what are some areas that you would like to hear from us? Because we could share a little bit more about the background of our college. Your professor, your teacher, Dan, talked about some of the areas of interest might be about the way our government works or the history of our region, or about maybe some of the organizations. Because I understand that there's some similarities, but there's also some differences and distinctions as well.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone else?
Great. Okay, so the floor is open to you guys. What do you want to learn?
My question is, do you guys do bowhead hunting every year?
Yes. Someone else want to speak to that?
Go ahead, Cordelia.
Oh, yeah.
You kind of tell Cordelia, and we're here for support.
Oh, okay. Like looking to EDPEC studies, but
no, actually, this is a great Jerica and Katie question.
Okay, I can actually answer that one. So yeah, we do bowhead whale hunting every year. We actually have 2 different seasons that we go hunting. We have our fall season, so which is like September, October, and then we have our spring season, which is in April and sometimes in May. So this season we actually had it was really difficult because we didn't catch any bowhead whales this fall from September, October, and for the first time in our history, a bowhead whale was caught in November, which was just like last week. And so our community was very happy. We finally had fresh mukta, we call it, the skin and the blubber part. So in the fall time, our hunters go out in our big boats out into the water. And then in the springtime, we have our ice over our ocean. And so our hunters go out to the lead. So they're camping out on the ice, and that's how they hunt but they use the sealskin boats.
Cool. That's cool.
What is your relationship like with the U.S. government?
Pearl, do you want to speak to that one?
Go ahead, Cordelia, and then I'll jump in.
Okay. So, relationship with the U.S. government. So, interesting thing about Alaska is that previously we were a territory. We didn't become a state until 1959. And when we became a state of the United States in 1959, that's when we started the process as a state of being able to select lands to become a state. So what that means is that when we were a territory, it was all federal land because we have our federal system and then we have our different states. And so most of Alaska is actually federal land. And so we really work a lot of our communities work heavily with a number of federal agencies. And so I think that there's been times where it's been very tenuous, but I think that a lot of our communities really, especially like our Alaska Native communities, are in a position to be like advancing our power and advancing our sovereignty. And also we're, I think, learning to ask really good questions about public process and engagement and consultation, and helping make sure that when people have to seek consultation, like different federal agencies, they're actually really consulting with their communities, and it's not just maybe like a check the box, like, oh, we went and we tried to hold a meeting and maybe a couple people came and that was it, because that's not really like meeting people where they aren't necessarily really engaging with our communities. And so I think it's a time where people are really seeking to ensure that like our rights are upheld, and also building relationships with our government and our government agencies, I would say.
Anyone else want to ask a question before Lily asks the second one? So.
I just wanted to mention that when she asked about the bowhead whale hunt, so my hometown Ilisagvik is named after a bowhead whale. In Inuktitut, it's called Ilisagvik, so that's why my community is called Ilisagvik, and like it's the connections and the similar things that we have. Yes, it's just something like that. Yeah.
It's really similar to what our word too. We say Ilisagvik for bowhead whale. Ilisagvik.
Hey, so I just wanted to mention that. Hey.
Nice. So do you have any questions you want to ask? Maybe later?
I do, but I'm not ready.
All right, so you're up, Lily.
Do you think you guys are well represented, like recognized in the government?
So I would say so. I think so. In Alaska, we have a federation called Alaska Federation of Natives, and there's 12 large regions of Alaska, and so we have what's called the Alaska Federation of Natives, which really does, I think, represent us pretty strongly in DC and ensure that the concerns of our communities are advanced at the highest levels, including at the White House, and regularly meets with the White House, regularly meets with our representatives in Congress. And so I would definitely say so. And I think that the power really is only growing. And similar to the lower 48 and across North America, there really was a movement in the 60s and 70s for Native people in America to really advance their sovereignty and self-determination. And so I think that's really similar to Canada as well. And I think that's really only grown and only snowballed as we became more engaged and more aware of the forces that really shape our communities.
We're kinda stuck between going to Greenland or Alaska for our year-end trip. What can you say about Alaska that would make us go?
Oh, we have luck turkey.
I'm sold.
We have a big freezer on campus down the street. And we have a big freezer on campus, and oftentimes community members will do like donations for food for the students there, but I'm sure that we would be able to find foods that you would be able to try, and you can maybe learn some dances and songs and things like that.
Whoa.
So if you want to come up to campus, you're absolutely invited as well. What time of the year is your end of year trip?
April?
End of April,
May?
beginning of May, yeah.
End of April, beginning
That's
of May.
when the last time we hosted a group from your school was, they actually came in summertime. I'm trying to remember what year it actually was, because they actually got to go out, maybe it was April, because I think they got to go out on the ice, but then it was summertime too, so I'm a little confused with my timing. But yeah, we would love to have you. You know, Greenland is beautiful. I don't know if any of you have had the chance to go over there before, but it's just an amazing country and just beautiful people, and the connections between all of us across the Circumpolar North are really incredible. You really see yourself, and I could see myself where you guys are. I could see in our families, and I can see I can see us in Greenland too. But we would absolutely love to host you up here in Barrow and at Ilisagvik if you guys were interested in coming for a trip. Absolutely.
Cool.
Are Alaskans fluent in Inuktitut or the language you guys had?
Jerica and Katie, you want to talk about that?
Wait, what was your question?
Are Alaskans fluent in Inuktitut or Inuktitut?
So My mom is in her 50s, and her generation is the last to be like fluent in, we call it Inupiaq, in our language, Inupiaq. But then there is like, our generation where we're working towards that fluency. And like Cordelia, she teaches an amazing Inupiaq language intensive where she, from all of Inupiaq region in Alaska. We also teach Inupiaq language classes, and we're really, really moving forward and progressing our language.
So I have a question. This is related to bowhead whaling again. So during the whaling era for the Canadian Arctic, there was a huge decline in bowhead whales due to overhunting and the high demand for whale products. And so Inuit and Nunavut sacrificed and also stopped hunting bowhead whales for quite a long time. And so is this similar in Alaska? Have you guys also faced a decline, and have you guys also sacrificed and stopped hunting them momentarily?
I can start this one because I was just reading about this actually, and so we did same thing. We had a really robust whaling economy, not a non-traditional whaling economy. We kind of call it like a Yankee whaling economy from the mid to late 1800s up until about 1910-ish, and it was because of the decline in bowhead whales, right? And so because of that decline and because of the increased use of plastics or the invention of plastics, a lot of the things that bowhead whales were used for, the whalebone or the baleen that used to be used for all kinds of things, from corsets to umbrellas to anything that was needed to be pliable. Because we had more plastics, both of those things really led to the decline of Yankee whaling. But we continue to whale to this day, although there was a threat, I believe in 1977, there was a threat where there were some reports, some scientific reports with data that showed that the bowhead population was not sustainable to be whaled, and so the International Whaling Commission said that we should stop whaling basically to help support that population. However, our whalers know the oceans the best, and so it was with working with our local scientists, our local whalers, that we were able to have our own bureau did our own study to show exactly how many whales that we had, and because our findings were more accurate and it showed a very healthy population, whaling continued. But that was a really big battle with the federal government to make sure that happened. Even relatives, great uncles of ours, went to go and meet with the president and whatnot at that level to really make sure that our whaling continued.
Wow, awesome.
Do they have questions for us?
Yeah, good idea.
Do you guys have questions for us?
Yeah, so I guess I'm just a little bit more curious about what are some of the other things you've been able to learn about maybe the North Slope region that we're from, or other Alaska Native groups, because we're happy to also spend a couple minutes talking about all the different Alaska Native groups or Alaska Native languages, or more about our language and culture as well.
So we learned a little bit about pre-contact and also a little bit about the contact period for Inupiaq, and we're hoping to learn more about the other indigenous groups as well.
Like the Aluit and Alito? Or is that it correct?
Aleut?
Aleut, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm really excited to be able to talk with you to find all of the different connections, because in Alaska, you have a number of different groups, and there's some commonalities between all of us, but there also are some really incredible distinctions that are really beautiful. So it's really great that you're spending time learning from all of these different groups, because oftentimes just because you're raised in Alaska, it doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily know a lot deeply about other cultures in Alaska, because they're just that distinct as well. So it's really good to be able to spend time with these different groups and also different language families. But largely with our Inuit communities. So that's like Inupiaq people, Yupik people, and then also more extensively like the Aleut people, and then some of the southern coastal peoples. So yeah, there's a lot of commonalities in our language, which is really beautiful with all of you. And when you get to more of the interior, so this is the Alaska map. So this is up here is where Barrow is, which is like Aleut people. But once you get a little bit more in the interior, it's a completely different language family, and that's really similar with more of the interior of Canada. And then up here, it's more similar with the most northern coast, which is most similar to you. And so that's why you say things. I remember, like in an email, Dan, you said Koyananik, and a lot of people say that in like this area, the Bering Strait area of Alaska. And so there's a lot of similarities. And actually, we have a lot of friends that listen to like Canadian Inuit music and really find a lot of inspiration. We're all playing Reed right now, and, all of it. I have some friends that listen to Canadian Inuit newscasts just to hear the spoken word fluently. We really drive a lot of inspiration, I think, from a lot of the really amazing things that Inuits are doing in Canada, and so really love being able to build relationships.
Maybe you guys can adapt to the language.
There's a lot of people who I've heard express interest in being able to come over to a little bit more of your side to learn where it is a little bit more robust in some ways, and you have had a lot of people go and visit and learn and bring it back as well.
Cool.
Do you want to ask about the dancing? You were curious last time, we never got a chance to talk about it.
I forgot what I was going to ask because I've been rushing.
Okay. Okay, gather your thoughts.
But so I have a personal interest on shamanism. Do you guys still have shamans in Alaska, or like in various communities in Alaska?
So maybe I'll jump in there, and Katie, Jarek, and Cordelia can add to it if they'd like. But we don't really. I think through the influx of westernized religion that really changed the whole perception and perspective of our communities in rural Alaska, our Alaska Native peoples. And of course, we could talk for hours on the pros and cons of what the results were from that. From Western religion coming into our communities, but in particular to shamanism, we don't necessarily have it. Although the one thing that we do have that's I believe has kind of continued is definitely tribal doctors is what we call them up here. And so when we get large groups of our Alaska Native peoples together, you usually would find a group of tribal doctors who are doing healing work, and we have some of those individuals, a few of them on the North Slope. It's kind of one of those areas that's somewhat of an art that is, we don't see it as much anymore, but we're actually, us as the college, we've worked in a couple of different ways to try to encourage tribal doctor training programs. And so we've done this quite a few years ago, and we're starting to renew the conversation with some of the groups out of our biggest urban center in Anchorage, who has a lot of health-related work that they're doing for our Alaska Native peoples. But I think more on a personal level, I think there are people in our communities who really embody what, for us, what a shaman would have been. And so sometimes we kind of, or I think you can kind of tell those people who maybe would have had a lot of those skills and traits if we were still kind of practicing in those ways. I too have kind of an interest in it, so that was a great question. And I don't know, Cordelia, Katie, and Jarek, if you want to add anything, you're welcome to.
I'll also add that we do have some elders still with us whose maybe parents were shamans in that sense, and so there is that knowledge that's still within some of our community members, but also there's also not often a lot of like conversation about it as well. And so like I personally have been more interested in learning about our own traditional spirituality, and so that comes from being able to have conversations with specific elders, not all elders that I've engaged with, but some specific elders who are knowledgeable, but then also honestly like piecing it together through a lot of books and materials from the time period or materials that come from elders who have now passed, talking about different things as well. But there's whispers. You hear whispers about some people in some communities who are still practicing, actually, and so that's really always interesting to hear. So,
that's amazing.
Yeah. So one of the oldest villages in Alaska is called Tikiak, also known, the English name is Point Hope. And so they actually have a traditional healer there. She's an elder, and she still works on people. And then also, Colin and I, we co-teach a traditional plants summer camp. And so the first time we offered it, we had a traditional healer come in and kind of oversee the camp. And so she taught about like the traditional plants and medicine and how to make it and what to pick. And so that's a whole different portion of like healing, is like, you know, the plant area. And she also does like energy work and stuff, but we didn't really get into that segment, but more into the plants, stuff.
Thank you.
So I have a question. So can you tell me about your Alaskan Native Land Claims Agreement, and was this like your first step to regaining control and having your rights recognized?
Yeah. Oh, Carol, go ahead.
Oh, that's such a great. We can teach whole class. We can teach whole semester long classes on that. Maybe all four of us might have been in some of those semester long classes about that. But so yeah, I think that the process of our land claims is really fascinating, and it's really an interesting study in kind of the social aspect of assimilation in a lot of ways. So I think in some ways we're incredibly blessed, because our Alaska Native people, there were 3 or 4 really huge factors happening in the late 60s that contributed to Alaska Native peoples coming together and saying, if we don't act now, we're gonna lose our state. We're gonna lose, and not even, at that, we're gonna lose all of our traditional cultural lands, and that connection, which we all know as Indigenous people is so key to who we are. So there was a proposed dam that was going to be in the interior of our state, which would have flooded a number of different village communities that the state was proposing. They found oil, the biggest oil deposit in North America here on the North Slope, about 90 miles away from us right now in Barrow. They were going to detonate a nuclear bomb near Point Hope to create a deep water harbor so that mineral extraction could occur. And then there was another. What was the fourth thing? There was a fourth thing as well that they were that the state and federal government was planning to do. So here our Alaska Native people got together. They said, we're not going to let this happen. Let's act. They formed the Alaska Federation of Natives, which Cordelia mentioned before, which is still inactive today. And what came out of that was basically our request to the federal government saying, these are our lands, these are who we are as a people. We want the rights and control of our land. Years of negotiations, of conversations, of fighting really, really hard. These would have been, our parents' generation. Many of them, went to Washington, D.C., which is thousands of miles away with, $10 in their pocket to try to advocate to our Congress that this was important and this was needed for our state. So the longest story, somewhat short, is that in November of 1971, the Alaska Native Lands Claims Settlement Act Native. I'm getting my acronym all my other words. I'm picking it sometimes acronyms lately. So ANCSA, Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, was passed, and basically it gave Alaska Natives, it divided our state up into 12 different regions, which then those regions had certain responsibility and ownership of lands, and that and it gave us about almost $1 million, $962 million to divide upon those regions, and 40-some million acres around the state that would be set aside for our regional corporations to basically to become Western. The whole concept was based on a very colonial Western settler ideal of profit and business. And so today we have a lot of people who don't really agree with what happened and how the process went. And it really was an interesting, just like I believe education has really, we've needed to change education because it's an assimilationist policy, Western education system. The same thing happened with AICSA, is that it was definitely assimilationist policy at its best to take Alaska Natives and basically say you need to be profit making. And so on one hand, we've had some regions who have been who are very lucrative and have a lot of success. And on the other hand, we've had regions who weren't as successful because their region maybe wasn't as resource rich as some of our other regions. For us, we had, of course, oil. In the southeast, they have timber. And so there's been a lot of conversation around the positives of what the land claims did, and then also that repercussion of what the negatives are. And so today, I think the good thing is that we have control and we have a lot of power, for lack of a better word, very much different than the reservation system in the lower 48 states of the continental U.S. But you know, there were definitely trade-offs, and there's people who will speak very negatively towards what has happened to us through that process. As a follow-up, there were certain things put in place so that all of the state could somewhat share in the resources of the whole state. It's a clause called 7I sharing, which was in the entire Puget Land Claims settlement. And so all of the money that all of these corporations make, a part of it goes into a pot that then is shared around the entire state. After the fact, we actually have added a 13th regional corporation for those who live outside of the state, but they're not very present in our state today. We have 13 corporations, but really the biggest, the most vocal and the most visible are the 12. So maybe I'll stop there, and if Cordelia, Derek, or Katie want to add anything, you're welcome to.
Bernik balagya kagata kawitiga walaga pitana lina tichi utabani hilakma manawa kugo kaluk lulaga pi tamapi lina katigiyaka ubangalu manawa kugo kaluk lulaga pi. So we just wanted to let you know that we have to wrap this up since one of our instructors is here. So my classmates and I are thankful that you guys took your time to have this conference call with us.
I mean, thanks, everyone. It's so great to hear you speak your language and to be fluent. I tell you, the four of us sitting here, wish we had that opportunity. And I just want to say how important it is for you to continue speaking and to teach your family and to continue it in your homes. All of us in Alaska, I'll say we just do, it's kind of like a jealous, but more of we wish we were, it's more of a positive in the sense of, we wish we were able to speak like you. And so I really commend you for that. And I encourage you to make sure to keep it going for generations to come. It's such a gift. So thank you for inviting us. What an honor it was to speak to all of you. Maybe someday we'll get to meet in person.
Maybe
so.
Thank you.
Question: is it okay if I screenshot?
Yeah. Okay. Say when. 1, 2.
You're good at that? Okay, you're diffusing, so I must be. Okay, you ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, 3.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nakok me.
One more, actually. Sorry, go ahead.
One. Here we go.
Another
Okay.
screenshot.
Ready? Just hold it. Okay, good. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Hey, in the make.
See you in April.
Like that video.
Bye.
Can we quickly take a 5-minute break?
Oh yeah, no problem.
Oh, that was a quick lunch. So quick. But that was so nice. So nice.
You guys are too busy.
I know. We came running from our performance
Yeah.
to like a 10-minute lunch.
No, really?
Yeah.
We actually ate wild grapes.
Oh no.
But that was still very interesting.
Cool. That was fun.
That was so cool.
Yeah. You guys are lucky you go to the coolest school where you have a performance, a Tall with Alaska, a class with Ron, and then you meet Nunavik students, right?
Me. Like I didn't pack lunch.
That's amazing. Cool.
That's good. Something's happening like that.
Sorry about that mix-up, Ron, but I really appreciate you being flexible. So,
What the two mix-up though was this one and then the Montreal.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was funny. And the thing was, I had lined up a bunch of stuff, people.
Yeah.
But it's okay. We can do it next week.
Well, I'd be happy to help if I'm available. I could drive them over to your office or maybe
I'm
take
not sure what
them.
they're going to do Tuesday or Thursday. We'll have a chat when you guys start back up.
Okay, great.
And because